he started following joggers around. He had a kill kit in his trunk. He had handcuffs, duct tape, like a mask to put over someone's head, and a handgun. This guy went ahead, tried to stop the jogger, kidnap her, and get her into the car. Well, she fought him. And as she's running away to someone's house, there's a guy coming out to get his newspaper, and all of a sudden he looks up and this woman's running going like, I've been shot, I've been shot. And the guy's still firing shots at the house.
Today on My Journey with the Badge, I'm honored to sit down with a true leader in Illinois law enforcement, recently retired Chief of Police Jim O'Shea. Jim served the village of River Forest with distinction for 30 years, rising through every rank in the department before taking the helm as Chief of Police in 2018. Over the course of his career, he led with purpose, professionalism, and a strong commitment to community-focused policing. As Chief, Jim oversaw major advancements in technology, officer development, and public engagement, guiding the department through some of the most challenging times in modern policing. Before joining River Forest in 1995, Jim worked in the Cook County Circuit Court Clerk's office and along the way earned multiple degrees, including a master's in public safety administration, and completed some of the top law enforcement leadership programs in the country, including Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command and the FBI's Midwest Law Enforcement Executive Development Seminar. Jim's influence extended well beyond his department. He served as executive director of the West Suburban Gang and Drug Enforcement Group, sat on numerous professional advisory boards, and held leadership positions in several law enforcement associations. With a career full of accolades, critical incident leadership, and meaningful service to the profession, Jim brings decades of insight and experience to the conversation. Jim, thank you for agreeing to sit down and share your story.
Jason, it's great sitting down with you.
So, tell me, why law enforcement, and why'd you choose the River Forest Police Department?
You know, I think a lot of us, when we get into law enforcement, we start testing. And I remember testing through a consortium out, I think, at Oakton Community College. There was like 5 or 6 towns. I was on all those lists. Had taken Chicago's list. It was frozen at the time because of some lawsuits going on in the city. And then I went locally, and River Forest was one of the local towns I felt held value. And growing up in the Oak Park community, I knew River Forest and the town, and it seemed like it'd be a great fit. At the time, working for Cook County in a non-sworn capacity, it gave me the opportunity to go out and test anytime I wanted. I was working Monday through Friday. Most of the tests were either in the evening or on the weekends. And when it came really close to decision time, I started getting calls from multiple agencies at the same time. Of course, to make the decision even harder. But River Forest, I thought I could do the most good for, and I also kind of felt, wow, I spent a lot of time there, had friends in town and played sports there. And I felt a little bit like that, let's give back a little bit. And that's how I ended up in River Forest.
So did you have law enforcement in your family? Why did you choose a law enforcement career?
So the law enforcement career, my dad comes from a military background, a law enforcement background. He was a special agent with the Illinois Department of Revenue's Criminal Investigations Unit. And then he went out to Oakton Community College in Des Plaines and became the program chair for the law enforcement program after he left the state. And I was always interested, you know, and you're watching all the cop shows and you're seeing what the officers are doing in the area. And I'm listening to the stories he's telling about people that have gone into the field. And it really just, wow, this sounds exciting. It sounds like something fresh, something new. I wasn't really set to be sitting behind a desk, or maybe didn't have the skill set to go into the trades, and I really thought law enforcement was going to be a great direction for me.
So describe the River Forest Police Department when you come on the job there.
So when I came on the job, there was about 32 officers. They weren't doing much hiring. In fact, during the round of like the 3-year list, there was 2 officers hired. I was one of them. A lot of Vietnam veterans were still floating around in the agency. The town had a reputation for being, 2 universities, a high school, a shopping area, a metro running through town, CTA Green Line ending at our border in Forest Park's border. And really there was a mix of crimes, a lot of traffic. We did a lot of traffic stops in that type of community. Number one complaint was always speeding, blowing of stop signs. But it was definitely the old timers. They did not, until you made it through probation, they were really old school. They didn't really talk to you. It was a little strange. Or when there was a paper call, you were the guy taking the paper. The horrific incident, you were taking that horrific incident, whether you knew what you were doing or not. It was sort of interesting.
So how many years are you with River Forest?
30. We'll do 30 years, 4 months, 29 days.
So over those 30 years, the police department must have grown a lot as far as minimum manpower, staffing.
No, we actually went down. During the economic downturn, like a lot of agencies around the country, and especially in Cook County, we went from 32 officers down to 28. And what that did is eliminated some of the specialty positions, tactical and traffic positions, and it created a lot of overtime because it was very hard. If you're running a patrol division with 21 people or 20 people, how do you, do all the other stuff? But through time, we were able to get the numbers up to 30 through a pre-hiring program. And as I think we saw across the country, my last several years was constantly involved in recruiting and retention and trying to work with the management team of the village and the village board president to make them understand our competition just isn't the 8 towns that are our comparables that was decided during union negotiations. It's the whole country. Mm-hmm. It's the whole state of Illinois. It's Indiana, Wisconsin, Iowa. And slowly they started to get it. And they worked great with me on, making sure those numbers stuck.
So where'd you go to the academy, and what was that experience like for you?
Went to the Cook County Sheriff's Police Academy. I think it was 95-1. It was over at the 4th District Courthouse, part of it, and then the majority of it was over at Triton College. Great instructors. They were like right out of Marine boot camp kind of. They were rough on you, and you need it. You need to be broken down, and you need to get strong. And they did a great job. I was the only one from my agency there. There was like 8 or 9 guys that were on the riot squad, the SORT team, I think they were called, from the jail. They were great because they had tons of experience and tactics behind them. And a lot of other suburban agencies. One of the saddest things I remember from the academy is a guy that sat next to me in the academy that I helped constantly, kind of tutored him a little bit as best I could. He took his own life after we went back to his agency, and they were going to let him go. And I guess he couldn't handle it, and he took his own life. And that was hard for that agency, and it was hard for a lot of the people from the academy class that worked with him. It was an interesting experience. The other thing to note with the academy, during defensive tactics, they brought in some guys that were just pulled off the street during an investigation, and they were part of a gang or tactical unit. They were very aggressive during their demonstrations of tactics or being role players. They didn't play around. It was sort of entertaining, and they could smell weakness. And I felt sorry for some of the cadets that were taking the brunt of that until these guys felt they were proving themselves be a team player.
What's the size of roughly? Do you remember the size of your academy class?
Yeah, about 40 people.
From municipalities all over?
Municipalities all over, and then I think we had a Cook County State's Attorney investigator in there, and then the 8 guys from Cook County. So they were all over, and those relationships spanned over, I think, the course of my whole career, where you'd run into these guys and see them moving up. And as you know, Jason, I had a great opportunity, and I think it was 2002, to spend some time with you out at SLEA, out in DuPage. Mm-hmm. And I think they were probably one of the strongest classes with the number of push-ups I think you had them doing. And that really opened my eyes, though, that academy, because it's completely different than Cook County. And we did have an officer in there. She's still with the organization today. She's doing great. But that really showed me there's other styles of policing and different processes that weren't occurring in Cook County. Some of them I liked. Some of them I thought were a little too strict. But it was a great experience, and I enjoyed that time. And I know you had officers in the class also, and I know they've been successful. I believe, and I've run into them a few times. So it's funny. My dad always laughed at me when I got out of the academy. I'm like, oh, I'm done with all this training and schooling and stuff. Well, then I got to go to another academy, and then eventually you're going to the Northwestern's programs. You're going to the M-Leads program. I went to the community leadership program through one of the local universities. And then I had to go for my master's degree. And he says, hey, remember when you told me we're going to do much more education or training? And constantly you were doing, the 40-hour training classes and everything like that. So definitely an interesting career development run. So if anyone says they get into law enforcement because they don't like training or education, they are getting into the wrong profession.
Do you remember what your first day, your first week after you graduated the academy and you got to your department, what was that like?
I felt like an alien a little bit, because you're the guy that's been gone. They only know about you from you stopping in or meeting some of the people. And once again, the old timers were a little rough back then. You had to prove yourself first. I had 2 FTOs. One of them focused on traffic. He did not like vehicles with front plates missing. So it didn't matter what we were doing. It didn't matter what was going on. You had to pull over, and he would test you. And did you just see that car? Did that car just pass by? Turn around, get that car. That type of stuff. The next one was really my next FTO, who eventually was the chief just before I left. He was great explaining how do you do the reports, how do you do the investigations, how to start tightening up and attention to detail type stuff. But I do remember a call, I think it was in my second week, and there's a call of something's going on at a 7-Eleven. And as you know, I was on the midnight shift because that's where they would like to take the new guy and the FTO. And we show up, and it's actually a rape and robbery.
Wow.
And there was a girl there. I believe she was Russian, Polish descent, here on a work visa. And some guy comes in and literally just beats the crap out of her, drags her into the back room, sexually assaults her. He drops his wallet. She's smart enough, takes the wallet, pushes it off to the side. The guy, though, this is how confident the offender was. He came out and started taking care of customers. The only reason why we got a call was, hey, there's some guy, he doesn't know how much the cigarettes are. He doesn't know how much the coffee is, and he can't get the register open. He said, oh, just pay me next time you come. So we started getting these calls, and we go over there, and the girl was locked in the back room. We had to break in, and she had been beaten bad. This was a brutal attack. But then the witnesses started coming through. Yeah, there was the newspaper delivery guys, and this guy was here. And then we're looking at the cameras, and we had a plate number. And eventually, we caught the guys out in Lombard. The detectives came in. They went out to Lombard. But this witness went through a lot, and I'm thinking, wow, this is like my second week. I'm going, wow, I never imagined in a million years that I'd be involved in this type of call with this type of seriousness, and this woman whose life was almost taken. And not only did she get robbed, she got violated. And it really made me start thinking, I think we're out here doing good stuff. We're doing stuff for the victims. We're doing stuff for the community. So it kind of was a feel-good start to my FTO career, or FTO training.
So that incident kind of really excited you for the job, kind of affirmed your decision to become a police officer. And you finished the field training program, and you're out on your own. What shift do you end up on, and what's that schedule look like for you?
They had a permanent midnight shift at the time, so I was floating between days and afternoons, which I loved. That was great. And you took any of the sometimes you had to take it because you knew you were going to be ordered because you were the low in seniority. And some of the veteran officers, they wanted their time off. But I really enjoyed going to every call. Backing up officers, traffic stops. We had a lot of retail thefts in River Forest, and you'd go on those. And, as you know, they're a mixed bag. Sometimes people just say, okay, I'm sorry. And other times they're trying to punch you in the head and then run from you, So I loved it all. There wasn't anything I don't think I didn't like doing. Even when they would say, well, the crossing guard called in sick, you got to go direct traffic. Okay, you're paying me a lot of money to do it. Yes, I'm fine. You got to meet the kids, the parents. No, it was great.
So from a probationary patrol officer to chief of police, kind of give me that overview of your career and how all that comes about.
So I started off, as we just talked about, a patrol officer assigned to the shifts. We had an outside chief at the time. He was the former chief, I think, in Mount Prospect or Prospect Heights. I don't remember which. And he was really trying to modernize the department. And one of the things he started looking at was utilizing people that had college degrees, that were from the area. And all of a sudden, I've been out in patrol like a year and a half or so, and all of a sudden I'm being asked to put in for a detective. And I put in for a detective. There was a couple other young guys that were open for the position, and the detective unit's small, detective, sergeant, detective, not a large unit. And I got selected, and couldn't believe it. I'm like, this is amazing. Now, it doesn't make everyone happy when one of the new guys makes, definitely ruffles some feathers. But I think the guy I worked for, I'd call him a mentor. And his name was Bruce Higgins, and he really showed me a ton of stuff that I would have never learned about every aspect of investigation, and making those reports even more detailed. Starting to think like, what's the defense attorney going to mess you up with on the stand for what you put here or failed to put in your report? But we did a lot of great case. It wasn't like separate detectives for financial or robbery or property crime. You did it all. So you became pretty good at a jack of all trades.
So from being a detective, what's your next assignment?
So, around towards the end there, I was detective lead supervisor. I end up spending some time with you out in Celia. I come back and get promoted to sergeant. There was an opening, a gentleman had retired, made sergeant, patrol sergeant, working all the different shifts, rotating now through 3 shifts. And then there was an opportunity. They were rearranging the organizational structure. They had 2 lieutenants. They got rid of those and then created 2 deputy chiefs. Then they wanted to layer it out a little bit, and they went to the union. And I remember this conversation where the union rep said, you got 2 exempt positions. You can call them deputy chief, deputy chief, deputy chief commander. You can call them asshole 1, asshole 2. And so I ended up putting in for this position, as well as every other sergeant at the time. I ended up being the first commander on the department. And it was, and at that time I had a lot of seniority, and I enjoyed it. It was a different aspect of it, and the department was going along at a good pace at the time. From there, I moved up to deputy chief. As we say, we moved upstairs to the top floor, and then a few years later, I became chief of police. And so I think the only position I didn't do, a couple of positions I didn't do either in the area of specialties or other type of spots, was the crime prevention officer or field training officer. I think I touched a little bit on almost everything. And I think it makes you more well-rounded. And I was someone, like, if you were being offered the training, I didn't say no. I always took it.
So at the time of your promotions, at the time of your promotion to commander, your organization was patrol officer, sergeant, commander, deputy chief, chief.
Correct.
1 chief, 1 deputy chief, 1 commander.
Correct.
How many sergeants?
So 5 sergeants.
5 sergeants.
And then we had corporals off and on. We still had corporals when I left. I brought them back. Appointed position. But instead of being an officer in charge every day, where one day the senior officer is someone's boss, and the next day they're not because the sergeant's back, it created a little bit of friction on the shift. So, once again, it's trying to build consensus with, hey, maybe these corporal positions, nice for get these officers to experience. Maybe they don't want to be sergeants after they're running the shifts, because they were still corporals when the sergeant was there. It was their responsibility to act as a supervisor. Okay. Yeah. And I never heard any complaints from the corporals saying, oh, this is too much. Of course, there was money negotiated through the union, especially pay, and it was an agreed upon amount, and it was a good setup.
So you're a new young officer. You're working midnights. I mean, the world is your oyster. You can make as many traffic stops as you want, no limit. Any traffic stops stand out in your mind when you look back at your career?
There's a lot. I'll share one funny one first. And that one is, it's midnight, and there's this car, and it's driving over the streets, the lawns, the parkway. Obviously, something's going on here that isn't normal. And it's a nice car. It's like a Mercedes, and what happens is it stopped the car with a few other officers. Who's in the front seat is a lady, a young lady, with a fur coat on, a bottle of champagne, and she's doing a bunch of cocaine off her dash. And she's completely out of her mind. She was a stripper and went through a bad relationship breakdown. She didn't yell, scream. She was as pleasant, as polite as can be, but she was nude. Luckily, we had a female officer working. And so we kind of handed, I didn't feel it was my responsibility to be lead on this, even though everyone showed. I think when the call went over to radio that, can you send so-and-so over? We got a lady here, she's naked. All the towns on our radio channel start showing up. It's very, very strange. They wanted to assist. And so I'll just say that was an unusual call. It went through the process of the DUI stuff, and I, but she was so nice. She just, bad time in her life and bad choices.
In-car video cameras back then?
No.
Oh, thankfully,
No.
right? Do you have the field sobriety testing? Oh, that would have been interesting in court to play that.
Yes. Another traffic stop, and I had many of these, but this one was just, I remember just being a newer officer, and I was just shocked. I pull over the car's tinted. It's like a big, old Buick or Cadillac or something. I pull it over, and the second I go to get out of the car, all four doors open and everyone's flying. I got a guy with like a mini Mac running, and luckily he didn't run towards me. He's now running. Someone with like a garbage bag, and I could see bags of marijuana falling out of the car. The driver's fleeing. He gets hit by another car across the street, and there's some other guy yelling shoot him or something, and I'm going. And you almost, everything goes so slow motion, and you're watching all this. And I can't get on the radio at the time because another town was talking. So I remember just kind of going to the rear of my car and just kind of watching, okay, who am I going to go after here? And then you always remember what you're taught in FTO, go after the driver. Well, the driver couldn't really run too much anymore. He had a little bit of a leg injury from being hit. So that's the guy I got. And what the strange thing about it, it took a while, but we caught everyone. Wow. They found it, and the dope was funny because every once in a while, this guy had this big, almost like garbage bag, and bags were just falling out of there and everything like that. But eventually they got him. But I remember that was like a oh shit moment, oh, this is this is bad. And you couldn't get on the radio, and you're trying to click the radio to get in, and eventually, and everyone came and helped. I mean, they did we had a very close working relationship with the towns around us, and but it was an oh shit moment. Especially when I saw that little mini Mac coming out.
Yeah.
And the guy luckily turned away from me and started running and didn't try to engage me.
Do you remember that guy when he was taken into custody? Was he taken into custody with that firearm?
No, he had lost it. Eventually it was recovered in the backyard. And luckily he did drop it, and it didn't turn into an officer-involved shooting, because those are not good.
Wow. What about, because you weren't just in patrol, you spent a good amount of time in detectives. Are there any particular incidents that you responded to as a patrol officer, maybe cases that you investigated as a detective that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple. It's a small town, and when something happens, it's really serious. There was an incident, and it's crazy. It involved a newspaper delivery driver again, and we had a woman that was shot a couple times. And she was at the, I think, Gottlieb Hospital, and I was sent out in the midnight shift. Had done a great job with it, but the short of the story was he started following joggers around. He had a kill kit in his trunk. He had handcuffs, duct tape, like a mask to put over someone's head, and a handgun. And he tried to stop this jogger, and the jogger was a Vietnam combat nurse. Tough as cookies, and I only know that because I interviewed her, and I remember, and she had been shot in her ass. One of the shots hit her in the ass, and the other shot I don't remember, but she's like, no, I'm not waiting just for an ET come. Can you take the photos here? You're a detective, can't you? I'll take them if you want. I said, I just was waiting for a female officer. No, just take. She was tough as nails, but this guy went ahead, tried to stop the jogger, kidnap her, and get her into the car. Well, she fought him, which I would expect a Vietnam combat nurse to do. And as she's running away to someone's house, there's a guy coming out to get his newspaper, And all of a sudden he looks up and this woman's running going like, I've been shot. And the guy's still firing shots at the house. And the guy getting his newspaper ran back into the house, and the women ran and they called the police. But we eventually had a plate number, and the gun was stuck still in the side compartment of the vehicle in front of the house. And he ends up just all his clothes. So we got all this evidence. We got all this stuff. Well, he's not asking for an attorney. They call Cook County Assistant State's Attorney, Felony Review Assistant out. So I'm the one interviewing this guy. And it was real strange. He wasn't admitting to it, but he didn't want a lawyer. He kept talking about he must have witnessed something, he heard something, but just wouldn't admit that he was the one that did it, even though it was his car, the gun, the kill kit in the car, the witnesses. And so we're talking, and I said, well, obviously, you fired the gun. We've already said you fired the gun. The gun's in your car, and if you weren't trying to hit a woman, who were you trying to hit? And he's like, well, I'm afraid of deer. And there was deer running around, and I may have shot a few rounds, which was great. State's attorney's like winking at me, because now we have the gun in his hand. He's admitting to firing the weapon, not firing it at her. And we got a few other details, and then he's like, well, I'm done talking. We've been talking. So now this goes to court, and all of a sudden, one day, these Cook County State's Attorney investigators show up, and they're like, yes, there's been a development in this case. Well, what happened? Well, he attempted to hire a jailhouse snitch who was actually an undercover Cook County Corrections officer to kill the state's attorney, and if that didn't work, to come after you. But the focus was on the state's attorney that was with me in the room, and actually, they have it all recorded. That sent in this undercover corrections officer, or Cook County Sheriff. He gets in there, meets with the guy. The wife or girlfriend wires some, or not wires, gives the guy, meets the guy, gives him some cash to pay it, and then he's arrested and charged with attempting to murder a witness and stuff. And he got some time. But no, I remember that case pretty distinctly. And when I thought it was over, I'm like, you got to be joking. The guy's trying to kill people from jail.
So was this his first attempt and first fail? There was no indication that he'd ever done anything like this before?
He had a miscellaneous criminal record, but nothing that he was out there, which made us concerned, like how many other victims, out there. So you always are reaching out to the state and county and the FBI, like, this might not have been the guy's first time doing this. Is there any other similar cases? So,
wow, that's incredible. Now, that's a big one, and that one's awesome. But I don't want to. Are there any others? I don't want to.
You know what? There is a few more, and maybe I'll share them as we move on to some other stuff.
Awesome. So I think it's safe to say that at one point, at least once in everybody's career, you get that feeling of, oh, something's not right with this. Something's just not right. Have you ever experienced that feeling yourself?
Yeah, multiple times. A lot of times in detectives, you worked by yourself or you were in certain areas. We boarded the city of Chicago. We had Maywood, great town, just a little bit of a gang problem there. So one of the things I remember is that really just were my spidey senses, I'll say, where the hairs were standing up. We go down to arrest the guy on a stolen car and a fleeing and looting on the west side of Chicago. Not too far off the Oak Park border. So I'm there with my detective sergeant. We had sort of made arrangements with an intermediary who was some mid-level conservative vice lord that was the offender's uncle. We're going to try to sort this out there, minimize it, and see where it goes. So we had called Chicago, say, hey, if you got a car, could you send it over? They didn't have any cars. There had been a significant incident it's been the 15th district, a very active district. So we go in the house, and it's like a gated outside fence, and then two doors to get in that were like, heavily fortified. Now we're in this house with this whole family. There's two of us, and the conversation it's starting to go south. And they're basically telling us, you need to leave now before you kind of can't leave. And I'm just kind of getting this feeling like we've maybe bit off a little bit more. And now we're on the radio saying, no, we need some cars over here now. I look out the window. There's like 40 or 50 people that have assembled around our squad car. And I'm going, wow, this is going to get bad. And I remember, at the time I had a pancake holster. If you remember the pancake holsters, they're still around, but not much tech. So I end up wrestling around with this guy. and because we're like, we got to scoop and go. This is it. We can't wait for Chicago. So in the mix there, and I don't think he was intentionally trying to do it, but he got his hand around my gun. I'm trying to, trap it and everything like that. Well, the gun falls onto the floor. And it was just a weird feeling seeing that gun kind of spinning around on this wood floor. And there's like 8 people in the room and 2 officers. So now we had...
Because the pancake holster, it's just a single snap at the top. That's it. There's no other retention device.
And at the time, I was carrying a Smith & Wesson, not a Glock.
Okay.
And so it was a heavy thump on the ground. So my priority went from, I think I just kind of flipped them on the ground, got the gun, secured it. Chicago shows, and there's 2 guys, and they're like, yeah, you're causing a riot outside. I don't know what's been going on in here, but there's all these people. We got to go now. We're your backup. There's no one else here. Oh. So the uncle, he's going crazy because he feels disrespected, which I got at the time because he thought he was going to negotiate this. So I remember we were getting out to the car, and the neighbors are throwing stuff at us and kicking the car and smashing on the, trying to break the windows. I just remember getting in the car, hitting the gas, and my sergeant sat with the guy in the back seat and stuff. We just got out of there. But that was definitely something, not only did I have a bad feeling the second I went beyond that gate, but it just kept getting worse, Stomach churning a little bit, just going, something's not right here. Something not right. But hey, live to die another day, I guess.
Or live and learn. So that doesn't happen again. What about, have you ever taken a particular course of action or done something and it just didn't turn out the way you had hoped?
Yeah, I felt that sometimes I didn't believe discipline should be punitive. And, I kind of had a reputation of being strict on certain things, not strict on others. But I think we learned over the years, and I think you've had some of the same training, that the whole idea is to make people whole so they go out and be a better officer after, they maybe receive some discipline. So there was a few times where officers could have maybe received some significant discipline, and they were sort of given that pep talk, and they seemed redeemable. And most of them, took that, and it was a fresh beginning. You never heard from them again, and they were always volunteer. Others, a couple of them just blew it up, and having problems with their street sergeants, having problems with the next layer of command, filing grievances. And it just became a lot of work, a lot of paperwork, a lot of headache, a lot of explanation to labor attorneys. And the number one thing they'd come back and say, well, Jim, you had an opportunity to recommend him to the Fire and Police Commission. This is kind of your fault. And what could I say but yes?
Yeah.
I had to admit that my plan of trying to take more of a educational and coaching counseling approach completely failed. And that's something I think it was important for me to realize. It didn't mean I didn't stop weighing each situation, but it cost a lot of time and money and created some animosity among some of the different groups of officers. But the question always comes back, well, if you would have done this, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So, sometimes you think you're doing the right thing for the right reason, and still you're just paving that road to hell.
Yeah. So, you mentioned, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk about it a little bit more, but a mentor, somebody that you think, whether you wanted to model your career, maybe there's more than one, but somebody you really look to as, this is the guy that I'm going to learn from.
I could really think of 2 mentors in my life. One was my dad, and coming from his background of military and law enforcement, education, and just doing the right thing, keep me on the right path. I think that's something he, had to do his whole life, was make sure I wasn't straying or doing something stupid, or, well, everyone's moving out to California. I'm just going to go out to California and go hang out for a few years, But he kind of also would talk about the importance of what you're putting back into society, what you put into, for the community. And there's people that can't help themselves, and that really stuck with me. So I always considered him a mentor. Throughout my life and completely in my law enforcement career. He was always open to, discussing things with me and saying, well, maybe you could have looked at it from this perspective too. He was good to sit down with. But another one within the organization itself was a guy named Bruce Higgins. Bruce was the guy that I ended up being teamed up with when I got into investigations early. He was tough on me, but he was also fair, and he taught me a lot of things. As I moved, became a sergeant, he continue to give me that mentoring and what's the right things to do, all the options to get to the same place. And even when he fell under some bad health, and even when he was under bad health, he'd be calling and checking in on me and saying, "Well, what's going on? If you thought about doing this, reach out to so and so over here." And that continued for my whole career. So really, I think of him as a mentor, and I think there's a lack of mentorship really in some of the organizations. And I do think there needs to be a big brother, big sister program, a mentor, either informal or formal, because I think it does help. And some officers, they don't have that at all, and I think they feel lost sometimes.
So and we didn't talk about this, and it's not something I even considered until you started talking about the lack of mentorship. There was a dramatic difference in how the job was done when you were on 8-hour shifts and how the job's done when you're on 12-hour shifts, and the interaction between shifts. And have you seen a difference from 8 hours to 12 hours in the social dynamic within the department?
We never did 12-hour shifts. We went from permanent shifts that were 8 hours, and then one of the things we did, and we went through 3 different studies, some from the outside, and then you had everyone coming out of Northwestern Staffing Command that got to have that great section called like resource allocation and everything. So what happened was with regard to, I'm sorry,
8 hours and 12 hours.
8 hours and 12 hours.
The impact, yeah.
Thank you. So we went to 8.5-hour shifts, which they worked 5-day work days instead of 6. I'm sorry, 5 days instead of 6. And then they always had rotating weekends were popping up more. They became happy. We couldn't do 12-hour shifts without lowering the minimum officer numbers on there and shutting down basically the TAC traffic unit that we had just gotten back up and doing. One thing I've noticed in the roll calls were very interactive. I mean, I had great people. As the new people came in, they really loved the organization. They would tell their friends would, our best advertising was from within the organization. And we were one of the few that was able to get back up to full staffing easier than any of the organizations around us. I'm not saying it was a team effort. It wasn't from me. But these officers interacted a lot. I loved going down to the roll calls, joking around with the officers, seeing them come in. And as you know, they're carrying a ton of equipment now. Even though we have these beautiful lockers outside the garage now, the roll call's in the basement. And they're still carrying one bag from there. They're going upstairs, they're getting their rifles, they're getting their heavy equipment. Yeah. But they really interacted in a way like they were friends. Now, the one thing that was different, though, than when I first started, you always went out with your shift or the other shifts. That really doesn't happen much anymore. There's not a lot, hey, we're going to join this 16-inch softball league and play. Doesn't really happen. But I will tell you, for the record, that we beat the fire department in our internal games numerous times. And I think the last time where they said, we're going to have to slow this down a little bit, one of the sergeants blew out his ankle. And he was a ringer, too. He could hit the ball. But there was great camaraderie amongst the officers. The midnight shift becomes almost like a separate part of your organization because you're not seeing them a lot. But I really enjoyed seeing the officers interact, and you kind of got a feel for where are we at right now.
Sure.
If you go in and everything's quiet, no one's talking, and people are kind of making faces, looking down at their phone, something's going on. And you rarely, if ever, saw that.
That's so interesting that you were able to hold out and not go to 12s. It seems so much like it's become industry standard, and quite honestly, to the detriment of the social interactions in turn, because you got half the department that never sees the other half. So that's awesome. Kudos to you for holding on to those.
I do like 10-hour shifts, but you got to have enough equipment. You got to have enough people on the scheduling side. And we weren't able to do that. The numbers just didn't allow us to do that either. But the 8.5 was sort of a compromise, and then it went to non-rotating shifts. So they loved it. They could schedule the whole year and know their days off, know that they had more weekends. They weren't working the old Chicago schedule where it was 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, 6-2, 5-3, 5-3. And that helped. But yes, we did have officers that left the organization, and one of the number one things they said was 12-hour shifts. And the younger the officer, they seem to like him.
Yeah.
I noticed some of the veteran officers don't like him after a while. And then what if you got to go to court? You get caught, you're the next shift short, and next thing you're being told, no, you got to stay another 4 hours or even worse.
Crazy. So high points of your career or your favorite parts of your career, your fondest memories?
You know what? Some of the stuff, and I'll take this just on one side. We had a memorial parade every year. It's our only parade, and it was big. It put the police department were just a core part of making sure it was successful, safe. And one of the things I did was get the honor guard back up and going, and that once again created. I wasn't sure if I was going to get volunteers again, and we had it a number of years ago. It went away, but we brought that back. Once we included that in the Memorial Day parade, it really made things, I think, pop to the community, adding the bike patrol on, a lot of little things, that were good to see. Seeing the business developments in town and new businesses coming in, that was sort of interesting at how to manage, what type of crime, maybe that's going to be associated with. Recruiting and retention. It was like an everyday thing, trying to figure out how do we not fall short in getting people to come to apply? Because if you remember in the old days, you might have 200 people show up for a suburban test. Now you're down to 15. Mm-hmm. And that same 15 is probably on everyone else's list. And then you get 5, but you knew you had 2 slots open in the academy, so you get your 2, but then someone else leaves, and then the list is expired. Now you're going through the whole process again. But the high points really are a lot of the positive stuff. We had a lot of equipment at the department, not just technology, less lethal, mass casualty bags, trauma bags. We could handle. We had enough stuff out there. If there was 60 people on the ground, we had bags in the cars that could handle that. Entry tools. The whole idea was to make the officer self-sufficient out on the street, and not like in the old days where stuff sat in the detective's office, stuff sat in the sergeant's office. Someone had to approve it at a higher level. If they don't have the tools, they're not going to be successful. Then you're trusting them with what? 2-ton vehicles and computers and guns and everyone's rights, but you won't let them have a shield in the car.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of the stuff, breaking some of the old school stuff and really trying to get these officers in. And that was feel good for me. And I definitely had a reputation a little bit for liking equipment and toys and tools and stuff like that. But I had great support coming from the village administrator. I had a great village president I worked for, and she was supportive of that. Because that was easy stuff, especially on the technology side too. Because that technology, that piece of equipment didn't have a pension, didn't have benefits attached to it. So sometimes it was easier to convince them on this, knowing that they were going to, be a little concerned about the tax base of the town and taking on, additional personnel. So it was interesting. It was always a give and take.
That piece kind of hints at how technology changed over the course of your career. What other changes did you see over your 30 plus years?
I think, when we talk about, I'll just kind of refer to the last 10 or 15 years, was the anti-police sentiment, the public going against you, and not even knowing why they were against us. The attacks on officers, just the lack of mutual respect that was going on. That was hard to see. And then every agency in the United States being painted as violating people's rights, hurting people, and never discussing the good work that was done. And that kind of hit me a little bit. And I remember some of the advice coming from the former chief, and he'd say, Jim, it's turnkey. What's going to go on? We made it through some stuff. Everything's great. Well, then what happened? More civil unrest, COVID, police reform. There was no just, everything's going to run itself. No, you had to be active. We joked about, with the sergeants on the street, active supervision. Unless you're showing up, unless you're backing them up, you're at the end of the night when you're reviewing reports and it's not looking good, maybe you could have been there to do it. So you, at the command level, every level of the department, you had to be actively involved in what you were doing over those years. I mean, COVID was the craziest thing, ever. And all the stuff that was abundant, all of a sudden became scarce, that you needed. And everyone was afraid what was going to happen. I remember during some of the civil unrest in the city, and we were off of North Avenue in Harlem, and that's the area where you're going to Chicago. And I remember looking down North Avenue one night. It was all hands on deck. All the command staff is out, detectives. We're out patrolling the streets because they were breaking into businesses, so some of the looters, I guess, and rioters. But I remember looking down North Avenue, and the city was like on fire. It was like surreal. It was like something out of a war movie, and all you saw was the blue lights. As you know, Chicago, their squads. You just saw tons of blue lights as you were looking at it. It almost goes like this down into the city. I was going, what is going on this, in this area now? Well, how did we arrive here? Just some of the stuff you recall, and it makes you think about, well, we got to do things different, but at the same time, you just can't sit back and expect an agency to run itself.
Sure. So you haven't mentioned it yet, but I'm fairly confident that I've seen you on TV being interviewed for a particular case. Fatal Attraction, I believe, was the name of the particular TV show.
There's a TV show, Fatal Attraction. It's probably been running for like 15 seasons. It's on the One Network. Some people know about it, some don't. But they came to us interested on a story with regard to a homicide that had occurred in our town that was a combination of just evilness and bizarre circumstances and little side stories to everything. And as long as it was okay with the family to participate, we were okay, doing it on behalf of the victim. And so the background on where we ended up on this TV show, there was myself and a detective and a sergeant at the time. At the time of the incident, I was a sergeant on the street, just coming in to work the midnight shift, and we get a call of shots fired, and everyone's rushing. So what had happened, and I'll just start from the beginning of the incident that we knew after the fact, was there was a gentleman who was a former police officer that was dating a girl. Very nice, beautiful young girl, bright future. But he was married. And then she had possibly stated she was pregnant or not pregnant or wanted to be pregnant. So he decides, out of all the dumb things to do, he needs to have her eliminated from the picture, needs to have her killed. So he gives his son $400. And $200 of it is going to be down payment to whoever he gets as the shooter. They come up with a gun. Out of all the places they can set up to do this in, they used to take walks at this park near Division in Harlem. And they park in the parking lot. They're talking. He had sent a text to his son, who's driving his car, another car he owned. And so what happens is that the shooter gets out and walks up to the window, starts popping rounds right into her, as she's sitting in the passenger side. The gun's jamming, he's popping more. It's a crap Highpoint gun, so you know the reliability there, and takes off. Well, he calls screaming, someone just shot my girlfriend, someone tried to kill me, and it's some of the best acting you'll ever hear, because we all believed it at first. It was so believable. And at the same time, the description goes out, a very alert Forest Park officer, great Forest Park officer, spots the car heading back towards the 290, towards the Eisenhower Expressway, does a traffic stop on it. Another Forest Park car comes, I come, and he already has both guys out of the car in cuffs. You can see the gun is sticking out from underneath the floorboard. And at the time, Forest Park had full in-car cameras, the mic, and the guy's caught on mic saying, "Hey, can I get that other $200 now?" That's how cheap life is, and that is so sad. Yeah. Now, the other thing that was sort of interesting, one of the officers brings over we'll say the other victim or the boyfriend, and to identify the two of them. Is this any of these guys, the guys involved? And he goes, no, don't recognize them. And the officer had run the car, and then they run it over the air, and we're like, wow, that's the caller's name. He owns this car. And amazing, one of the guys in the car has the same last name. So then it starts turning sideways real
Yeah.
quick, because now you're going, whoa, 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 what's going on? So we take everyone into custody, and then Chicago starts showing up. Well, the girl's brother was a police officer in Chicago. Now we have Chicago officers wanting to assist in the investigation. They're trying to get into the station because I think they want to get a hold of these guys, and it's not going to be good. So it just became a sideshow of just nonsense. The guy eventually, two of the three fully admit their involvement. The boyfriend, the father, he just danced around it, but all three of them got convicted for it. But it was such a sad story. The girl had such a bright future, and life was worth $400. And that was the sadness of it. And then to hire your son, to hire someone, to kill someone, because that seemed to be the only option to get out of a relationship. Terrible. Just a mix of bad decisions. But everyone got convicted eventually. It took some time, but everyone got convicted and the case worked out. But it was just very unfortunate for the family. It's a big family, and I could tell they loved this, sister, daughter, friend, cousin. But sometimes life takes things in a different direction. But so we ended up on the Fatal Attraction TV show and being interviewed, and it was sort of you start, as you're being interviewed, like we're talking here today, you start remembering little details about it. So it was a little bit therapeutic because it was definitely highly critical emotional event that had occurred.
Organized retail theft case you had?
Yes, so in Cook County they created a organized retail theft task force, and included, really for the first time that I knew of, the banking industry, the retail theft industry, partnering with law enforcement. And I'm talking all the top, security and loss prevention and investigators from, all the banks, all of the retail establishments. They had unlimited resources too. I mean, they got a ton of money. So we end up having, just at our little Walgreens and CVS and some other stores, all the over-the-counter items that are now locked up when you try to go get some razor blades or some deodorant or something that was being taken. We made an arrest, and the guy offered to tell us where the fencing operation was. And the fencing operation was in K-Town. And if you're familiar with K-Town in the city, it's sort of the heroin highway too, where people take all their stolen goods, they go to the fencing operation, they sell them, they go a block down, they get their dope, they go another block down, they go to a shooting house, and it's a constant revolving door. So we worked this informant, and we introduced one of my detectives as an undercover, and we have the full support of the organized crime task force. We're working directly with the supervising state's attorney, who is great, and we end up selling stuff. Well, during one of the incidents we were down there selling stuff, the officer's mic falls onto the ground, and at the time, and just through his description of and he's still a detective sergeant today, and it's just funny how it comes out across the floor. Everyone looks at it, and he kind of plays it off and grabs it and goes, "What the hell you got on your floor here? What's this thing?" And takes it, walks outside, and throws it in the garbage. And they're like, whoa, what was that? And they're like, "No, you tell me what was that? You got some crap falling out of the ceiling or something?" He plays it off so well. But eventually, there's additional stuff being sold. The investigation, well, we end up serving like 4 search warrants on houses and different things. The other agency involved was Chicago. We just started confiscating things, arresting people, and some people got arrested. Well, part of the story, as it developed more with the federal partners and some of the Chicago guys and state guys, was these items were being repackaged, sent to New York. Some were being sent to New York. Others were, of course, sold in New York, but then they were being sent over to Jordan, and supposedly they were connected to an extremist group, and they were using that money to fuel and fund their buying of weapons or other activities. And I kept thinking, God, this little case starts in River Forest, and it ends up across the country in New York, and then a connection to Jordan. So when people talk about retail theft really isn't a problem, or there's no victims, they're just wrong. They don't know, and I don't expect the general public to know this or appreciate this, but I just couldn't believe where the case took.
Wow, that's incredible.
And we got some great, I mean, the organization got press out of it, the Retail Theft Task Force, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, they really got some good kudos there. And it kind of pointed out that it's just not a local problem. One other incident I was thinking about before when we were talking about Jason was, we had the change in the state's attorney's office from Kim Fox over to now Eileen Burke, and it was like night and day. And this is almost as recent as a year and a half ago or so, or 2 years ago. And so we had an incident where a couple other agencies, Riverside and a couple other towns, were chasing a car where someone had pointed a gun at one of their sergeants. Ends up being a chase. There's a T intersection entering into our town out of Forest Park. The vehicle goes straight, drives right through a dentist office. The offender's inside. Midnight shift, always this stuff happens when? Midnight, 3, 4 in the morning. And so one of my officers goes around to the back to see if the door's open and make sure the offender doesn't run out. And he was a great officer. I seen this guy get T-boned by a carjacker and then get out of the car running full sprint, where most of us probably would have just fell on the ground and started calling for an ambulance, He goes to the back and is pulling on the door, and the guy starts firing shots at him. Fires 2 or 3 shots at him, doesn't get hit. He's downplaying it like, I don't know, someone fired a gun, I don't know, yeah, they're probably, they didn't hit me though. Well, under the old Kim Fox regime, that would be, that they'd continue it for investigation, they wouldn't want to really push it. But under Eileen Burke, she handled it like the state law would want, and other prosecutors, like the guy out here in DuPage County, Bob Berlin, I think does an excellent job. Through the investigation, we get assigned another state's attorney from 26 and Cal, which, as you know, is the home office there down by the jail. We get attempted murder of a police officer. And there wasn't anyone in an apartment. We were all going, oh my God, this is a change. And it was the first time where someone realized, yes, you shoot at a police officer, it's attempted murder. It's not assault. It's not just a regular UUW. It's attempted murder.
Wow.
And that case is still pending right now. But just really to see that change from really someone that was trying to view things through a utopian lens, and it really created more victims and scared witnesses and offenders. And right now I think you're seeing it where the no cash bail, these people sign complaints, and then the bad guys out the door, walking past their house, following their families. It's hard to want to participate, I think, in this criminal justice system with the no cash bail right now, because the offenders are right back out on the street.
Wow.
Wearing ankle bracelets and monitor on intensive probation, supposed to be checking in with parole. And that's, those are great stories for another day, how I think parole and probation need to start looking at things through a different lens also.
Yeah, no, and we experienced one of the same things: armed robbery, ankle bracelet, home the next day, and just had to be indoors after 5 p.m. every day.
Yeah.
It's like, wait,
so you do all your crime before 5?
Yeah. And that was in Cook County, during my time in Cook County, not here in DuPage.
Sure.
So when you look back at your career as a police chief, is there anything that you're particularly proud of, any accomplishments?
In the area of wellness, and officer safety. And the officer safety will be short. It just was getting them the medical gear, the protective gear, the heavier weapons, adding a semi-automatic shotgun, adding a 7.62 rifle, to the armory. All the officers, had ARs. We still had shotguns out in the field, but really giving them the confidence that they can handle anything that would occur. With that, on the wellness side, more importantly, we created a wellness room. And there was a vision, and it was kind of mocked at a little bit and joked, amongst different people at first. And I'm like, no, the officers have talked about other agencies having this, having the comfort dogs, and we couldn't afford a comfort dog. But we had this room that used to be a photo lab, where in the old days, you remember you had the 35 millimeter film, you had a development, it was a room, junk in it. So got carpeting in there, redid the walls, got a nice $5,000 massage chair put in, and the officers were the ones selecting all this stuff. It wasn't just the chief or the command staff. I was definitely taking lead on it, and we did a great job overall. The team put together the lighting, aerobic scents, going on. The massage chair became a hit. And that was one of the other part was sending them out to that 100 club training and really getting involved with eventually us starting our own peer support program. And any of those things, I think, Jason, when we first started, they would be sending you for fit for duty. The newer officers, they embrace it because I think they see some of the trauma and they've been told about the trauma. And, in Chicago next to us, so many officer suicides. I saw a lot of agencies talking about doing things but not getting it done. And I think we went full on and had the support of the officers, had the support of the village's management team and the village board. And I think it really helped and continues to help. And I think that peer support is important so they can talk to those, maybe even before they need some professional help, that are people they trust in their own department and they know it's not going to be blabbed outside of it. So those two things of the wellness program, the peer support group in that wellness room, they call it the Zen Den. They gave it a nickname and actually put a little placard out there. And it says, occupied, not occupied. And at first we tried to have it where, officers signed up for it and no one was signing up for it. Why? Because no one wants to be on record that they went in the room. So I said, guys, we tried it. I understand it. You want to keep track. I said, let's just leave it open-ended, and if we need to, if it becomes a problem where people are waiting outside the door to get in, well, we'll address it then. And that was a big change, and all of a sudden we found the room getting used more and more and more. But that's something that really made me feel good because I think it was definitely needed in law enforcement, and I think, Jason, when we started, it just didn't exist, and you were looked at as weak. You were looked at as cuckoo or something like that, and it wasn't, and what did everyone do? They went home and had problems with their families. They had problems with alcohol, drugs, and that's not the way to, I think, resolve it.
So you talk about officer wellness, and you talk about the impact the job has on you mentally. Do you think the job had an impact on your family?
Yes, I do think so. My wife came from her dad was a fireman in Forest Park. So she was kind of used to her dad being away, on a shift or maybe working an overtime shift. But at that time, the fire side was a little bit ahead of things. The families would come over to the firehouse. They'd barbecue outside. They'd have dinner. They'd play some wiffle ball. And, but she knew that there was call-outs. Her dad would have to get up. There'd be a fire. He'd have to go in and backfill So she was kind of used to that. But I think eventually over time, the pager, and then eventually the Nextel, that if you forgot to turn off the volume, people were screaming at you at 2 a.m. and while you're sleeping. But just the text messages and everything, you're being woke. You never got good sleep because you're always worried you were going to miss, a text or call. But I think, as I moved up and, especially in the chief ranks, I had good people, great deputy chief, great commander. And they were able to filter through a lot of things, so I wasn't sitting there trying to put my thumb on things at 3 in the trying to sleep. But, when you got to get up, and especially when I was in an investigation, you might have to leave a wedding. You might have to leave a family event. The only time you were safe is when you were out of state or out of the country or something like that, And I think that wore on them a little bit. I think with my daughter, not being able to see some of her games or other school events because you're working late or there's meetings and you can't work it with the type of schedule you had. I think that was a little bit rough on them. And it's as I've retired, they've actually shared some of that with me, and it really made me feel wow, I was thinking it, but they were living it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I talked to another officer who said, I'm sure it did have an impact on my family, but at the time you're in it and you don't see it.
Well, you're focused on your mission.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And as I was talking, with my dad, I was like, I retired, and it's like one day, I had 13,000 residents, 2 universities, a high school, a great shopping district, 34 employees, working with great staff, a nice squad, and all the stuff. And the next day, you got nothing. It cuts you off from everything. It's a weird experience. But I could touch a little bit if you'd like on retirement and how how I made that decision if you'd like.
Yeah, let's, before we get to that though, because you just talked about being cut off from everything. Do you miss it?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was the chief that, and there's some chiefs like that, some not. No, I'd go on the street. I'm backing up officers. I'm showing up on cases. You're in and out of River Forest in a matter of minutes or seconds, depending on where something happens. So, especially with the license plate readers and the street cameras and everything. Well, the car's been spotted over here. I'm going down there, and sometimes my deputy chief and my commander would go, "Oh my God, just come back to the office. Just come back to the office." But I knew those neighborhoods, and I knew them well, and I knew them better than some of the officers, and I felt comfortable. So it'd be sort of interesting because I'd still stop people. I'd still help, get people in cuffs. I wasn't there to run the show. I always think if someone has a great idea and it gets us to the same place, that's excellent. They don't need the chief to tell them what to do. But it was interesting out there watching the decision making of the newer officers and how they figure things out. It definitely was just a little different how they sort of, worked their game plan. But no, I was the guy that really enjoyed still stopping people and interviewing people. I loved interviewing people. I loved interrogating people. And on the street, everything's fine till it's not. So joke and laugh as they're, threatening to kill you and your family and stuff. So that's some of the stuff I'll definitely miss. It was like a big family there, especially towards the end. And wow, I just felt blessed that I didn't have to show up to someone's house and say that their loved one had been killed or severely injured on the job. So I kind of missed that, that being around that team and that family environment there, and definitely being active. And you get calls and like, well, who do I need to talk to over there? We had this happen, and and so I still get one of those calls, but the right people are in the right places, and remember, we're all replaceable.
Yeah.
So I miss it, but I don't miss it to the point where I needed to rush out right away and find another police job.
So why did you decide to retire?
So a couple of reasons, and some people know this, some don't. But in 2022, I was diagnosed with throat cancer, and it was caught early. And I had a great team of cancer team over at McNeil Hospital and then Loyola Hospital. So I had to go through some severe treatments. It knocked me out of the box for like at least a year or so. Lost like 60 pounds. Not the weight loss program you want to go on. Chemo, surgery, radiation. And after I got out of that, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to come back. But then my strength started coming back. I was getting good reports back from the doctors. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, if I do come back, I'm really kind of hitting close to that 30-year. I got to start thinking about succession planning, doing things, the right way. Had an opportunity to sit down with the village president, talk to her a little bit, and she said, well, let's start moving in that direction. Are you looking? You want to leave right? No, I said, anytime after the 30 years, that's fine. So we started putting a lot of stuff in play, some additional training for some of the other officers, other command level and supervisor level. And we followed that plan. And we have an inside chief, and that was my concern. They were going to go outside. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. They were very happy with the deputy chief and his work. And the commander moved up. We had a sergeant move in to the commander spot. Crime prevention officer change, a sergeant's promotion from the Fire and Police Commission. So it really kind of worked out. It made me feel good that they didn't think I prepared or the other command staff people were ready to take it on. And so it really was a feel-good thing. The big joke was we talked about, with the village president and the village administrator. Well, let's talk about leaving at some dates. So the dates range from like March of this year to possibly going out to July. And then how it is in when you look at finances, they're like, oh, new budget year is May 1st, April 30th. Let's see if we can pay him out with anything that we need to pay him out in, close out his benefits, and get him over on the pension side. And it was fine. It was just funny. It's like because of a calendar date. And I could have been out of there in March. I could have been out there in April, early April and stuff, or I could have been out in July. So it was just kind of funny. It's like, all right, so you're kicking me out the last day of the fiscal year just so you don't have to pay any money out. But I felt really good. It was agreed upon. We worked it out. There was really no sticking points or issues. And I think everyone from the village board side and I think some of the people in the department, they felt good knowing there wasn't outsiders coming into the organization. And that also proved what? There's inward or upward mobility within this organization, which is another, I'd say, retention tool in itself. So it sort of worked out, but really the time is that after I went through, the health issue, that really made me, and I wasn't thinking about it before. I was just, but after that I was like, wow, maybe I can't do this anymore. I just don't want to abandon things. And I was able to get back in there, eventually. It was, had to take some time and spend a lot more time in the office, which made everyone happy. But eventually when I got my full strength back and everything like that, I was out there doing my thing. But, I was just in contact with the officers the other day and they're happy. They're doing a good job. There's a couple openings that have come up, and they got a fresh list, and hopefully they'll get them filled. So these are great news. I had officers pregnant, and they're starting to have their babies. That's always excitement. So this is great news. I love hearing this type of stuff. I'd rather hear all that positive stuff than that one of the officers. I just, as I'm talking with these guys, and they're like, Paul on Minutes, Paul spotted a stolen car that had taken off from another officer. And when they got into Maywood, the guy started firing rounds and put two 10mm rounds in one of our covert vehicles. I don't think the guy knew he was the police or not. He had never lit him up. But the officer, in a split second, had like 15 or so, whatever it was, multiple rounds fired at him to disable the vehicle. Luckily, none went through the windshield or hit him. And the 10 mil is a big round. And I loved that covert car. And I said, after I made sure the officer, like, hey, how's the car? Because we seem to have these cars get destroyed on the gang task because people don't stop. They just ram you or they hit you or try to disable you and stuff. But I was glad to hear the officer's okay. And I'd rather hear about everyone's baby is healthy and happy than some of that stuff, because that's just part of that no respect and committing violence against law enforcement that needs to stop.
So what are you doing now?
So right now, I sort of made a commitment to the family. My wife's okay if I go out to work again, full-time, overtime, whatever time. But at the same time, it's time to sort of regather the family together and turn it back into a fully functioning family again. But we spend a lot of time up in Wisconsin too. So it's kind of a nice getaway instead of just being able to spend, 2 days up there every few weeks. I could do 3 or 4 days a week. In fact, after this interview, I'll be heading up there to enjoy some lake time.
Nice.
But there's so many projects that whether it's up at the Wisconsin home or down here that need to be done. So I'm moving through that. I have a feeling, though, in about another month and a half, I'll be sitting there a little bit with idle hands. And I'll need to do something, and whether it's in a part-time, full-time role or a consulting or advocacy role, I'm not ready to hang it up. I'm just want to make sure I choose the right choose. And I think when you work that 30 years, it gives you that ability to have a little time maybe to plan things out and not be forced to immediately, because of your monthly bills, to rush out there and have to find employment. Now, I'm also blessed that I have one perfectly healthy child, but it's got to be a struggle for those that have 4 or 5 kids, to make sure they maintain the comfortable or the lifestyle that they have.
So do you have any parting words of advice for anybody that might be considering doing this job, or maybe somebody who's just starting out?
Well, find out, that you want to actually be in this career for the right reasons, and that you're willing to sacrifice your family a little bit, your time off, your physical health, your mental health. And I think part of that is you need to stay in shape. The big part of it's the physical part. You really need to have it, because I could tell you as you're older, I could tell a little bit of it's a young person's game. Because I can't get out of the car and go full sprint after. I'm probably blow something out. But you stay in the car as long as you can, and you work it from there. So physically fit. And also each agency really operates, when they talk about nationwide that the police, policing industry should start operating like the fire industry a little bit. Everyone's operating sort of under the same rules, regulations, processes, and all that. We've done the opposite. I think we've moved farther away. I think we've done great on the communication side, especially radio communications. I think that's next level. Instead of having a radio that when I first started that had 2 channels on it, I got a radio with like 300 channels on it that covers 3 bands. I mean, it's amazing. But each agency does operate a little bit differently. So just don't think, I want to get into policing, and really do a lot of research on the agency that you're going for. The pay, I believe it's a buyer's market on the pay. You get paid, but remember, if the agency's short 20 officers, the second you come out of the academy or field training, you're going to be working all that overtime too. And look at the specialty spots. Does the community like the police? A lot of communities turned on their own police departments for one reason or the other, or just a build-up over time or historical related issues. I worked for a town, they liked the police a lot. And that was important. I think that really helped not only myself, but all the officers in the organization working for a town where the police were supported. So stay in shape, but get into the education part. It doesn't mean you have to get a 4-year degree. But if you're not going into the military, take time, go to the junior college, take all those criminal justice programs and see if that's interested in you. I think with the lowering of some of the educational requirements, you get people, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into, and they haven't had to take a test or study something or create a project since they were in high school. And I think it throws them off, where I think those that come out of the military, or those that at least have a little bit of community or junior college under their belt, I think are a little bit better prepared to know what they're set up for.
Chief, that's some great advice, especially shop around for the agency that's the best fit for you. And I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down and share your journey with the badge with us today.
Thank you, Jason.